This is a vision the Lord was working with me on Tuesday, but just due to circumstances, I was unable to really hear or see anything until this morning, which is Thursday. So this morning I saw the sun setting, and in front of it were shadows of small mountains, almost like rock mountains. They weren't large, but they were mountains. And this particular place was actually at Whiskey Creek Beach, but it's the position that it was in was sort of where the ships come in and where boats come in from the actual like ocean area. It was in that direction, and the sun was setting there. I'm actually not sure where the sun sets normally. I'm bad with directions, but that's where it was setting in this vision. At this point, the waters began to part, but they didn't part as in they were liquid water parting. They parted as if they were breaking apart. So it was a stiff substance. It wasn't liquid. And after the cracking began and they were split, some arms came through that area and pushed aside the waters, or the stiff waters, and just made room there. And then after this, I saw people walking through, and there were millions and millions. Like, they looked like ants. There were so many people there. And they weren't, of ancient time or of now time. They actually were very undescribable in a way. Like, they were plain. They weren't anybody I recognized. They were just people. I think they were just meant to represent people. I didn't have faces or anything. But they began to come through this way. And at this point, I was sort of wondering where they were headed. And I started to kind of look and see where they were going. And I saw a large group of people walking up to Whiskey Creek. And I saw them coming through the way of the boat ramp, up where the boat ramp is, and then you kind of come up and go up towards the house. They started going up that way. And then I saw what looked to me like either Moses or Jesus, because this was a big throne with a scepter, but it just reminded me of what he was doing. But so it must have been Jesus, but I thought it was like an older gentleman. But anyway, he was sitting, let's see, so over by where the what are they called? My mind is blank, I'm sorry. The tent, not the tent sites, the A-frames, I'm sorry. Where their original A-frames are, there was a little bit maybe further back, there was a huge, like, giant throne with somebody sitting on it with a scepter. And he actually stood up, and I didn't see his face, but I, again, thought he was, well, anyway. He took his scepter and he put it down where the people are, and he sort of began to separate them. Like, he moved them like a sheep would shepherd, and sort of use his, like, shepherd's crook or whatever it's called, to separate these people just from one side to another. And that's what made me think, he was a Lord, but also Moses. I don't know. Anyways, then at this point, right at the beginning, where I saw the shadowed mountains and the sunset, a shepherd, an actual shepherd, appeared, and he had the shepherd's crook, and he tore the veil in half, like, not like a bride's veil, but like that thick veil, like over the temple, that one. It was thick, and he ripped it in half, and then he threw something forward, like sort of into the air a little bit, and it was slow motion. And what I saw there was a blue velvet bag, like a pull tie bag, and 2 dice. that had like two, like have like, it's called snake eyes. It's 1 and 1. There were 2 dice with 1 and 1 on them. And then water drops. And then these items sort of put themselves into that bag, and that bag tied off and sort of stretched out vertically and then disappeared. And then right after that happened, I looked down and I can see that the person on the throne that had the scepter sort of, this might be hard to explain, drew a line in the sand down in where that water was separated, but he drew it partially in the water and then drew it along the open sand, and that allowed the water to kind of pour into that area. But this was after like the last of the people who were separated to go up to Whiskey Creek had gone up. Like you could see the last of them gone up, and as soon as like they took their first steps up towards the way that they were supposed to go, then the scepter came down and opened the way of the flood. Like the water poured out. It was no longer the stiffened water. It was actually water, because as soon as he's sliced, through that and then drew the line in the sand, and it looked like there were 2 ways to go. Like it looked like, the way that I'm seeing it is, that place that opened up, sort of, there was a place to kind of go off to the right, a pathway to go off to the right to where Whiskey Creek was, and there was a path that still went sort of straight instead of turning off. And when the scepter came down and sliced through the water, it drew that line over that other way. It was almost like that way isn't accessible anymore, and those who were going to go that way were now covered by the flood. That's the image I sort of am getting. Anyway, that was the end of the vision.